EAGLES, Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Birds 365 here on JAKIB Sports. I'm your host, Zander Krause. That's my co-host, John McMullen. Give us a follow on X at Real Zander and at JF McMullen. Johnny Mac, a big Tuesday edition with some key departures on the Philadelphia Eagles. How you doing on this Tuesday morning, Johnny Mac?
I'm doing fine. Hopefully Eagles fans are doing fine. It's not about one day. Howie told you it was going to be a maintenance off season. Don't panic. It's not the best free agency class in the history of the world. And here's where the smart teams start making their hay in the second phase. Now, there's still some guys. Already this morning, Jonathan Allen signed in Minnesota. He got a big deal. As I expected, he can still play. And the Giants brought in Javon Holland, safety, on a pretty big deal. So there still were little pieces that, but once that goes, and that'll probably go today for the most part, already started. You'll start to get to the second phase, and that's when you try to find the diamonds in the rough, and that's where the Eagles tend to excel. So we'll see how that shakes out.
That's a big deal for Jonathan Allen. That came down a couple minutes ago here before the show. I didn't even see that come in, but that's big money for Jonathan Allen, and that follows up a lot of big money that was dished out across the NFL world yesterday. John, let's start with some of those Eagles departures, though. Milton Williams gets a big deal from the Patriots. 4 years, $104 million with $63 million guaranteed. Isaiah Rodgers to the Vikings, another Vikings signing. 2 years, $15 million, $8 million guaranteed. Josh Sweat to the Cardinals, 4 years, $76.4 million with $41 million guaranteed. And then it was topped off by a Kenny Pickett trade to the Browns. But just your overall thoughts on those moves, Johnny Mac, and the
Don't forget Oren Burks.
A
lot of panic over Oren Burks.
Bengals.
It goes to Cincinnati. I said it yesterday when we did football 24/7. I think all of these moves were expected by the Eagles. Maybe Isaiah Rodgers, a little bit of wiggle room if they could have gotten him back on a 1-year deal. But once it got to 2 years, the Eagles probably out, is my guess. Same thing with Oren Burks. Once it gets to 2 years, becomes very, very difficult. So I don't think any of this was a surprise to the Eagles, but it hurts, especially coming off Super Bowl, and you got to put an asterisk on Darius Slay. He might be out the door. Still never ends with Slay. It's like, man, is he out? Could he be back? But he's most likely going to be leaving as well. So if you add him into the mix, basically 11% of your Super Bowl winning roster is out the door on the first day of free agency. So when you look at it like that, the people start getting on the bridges. But, when you think about the NFL and the nature of it, 30% turnover basically every year, it's just part of it. And when guys, we talked after the Super Bowl, when guys like Milton Williams and Josh Sweat are good players and perform like that on the biggest stage, they're getting paid. And they got paid. And Milton Williams got the biggest contract in New England Patriots history. Now, I think people that watch this show, people that know me, I like Milton a lot. And I think he's a really good player. Is he the best player in New England Patriots history? No. So when you start with that expectation, because that's the expectation now in New England. This is the biggest contract in Patriots history. You got to be a star. Is Milton a star? I don't think he is. And I love the guy. I think he's really, really good. I think Eagles fans have talked themselves into the fact that he's not really good because they don't want to think about losing him. And Jalen Carter's better. Yes. And anybody who's playing next to Jalen Carter is going to ascend a little bit. Are they going to ascend to Milton's level last year? I doubt it. So that's where I am with Milton Williams, but he was going to get paid. Josh Sweat was going to get paid. And then the other guys, Isaiah Rodgers, like I said, that, once Minnesota goes to 2 years, and plus he gets the opportunity to start there. Not that he wouldn't have the opportunity to start here, but he knows that the Eagles want Kaylee Ringo to win the job. So, to me here, Ringo's penciled in. Out in Minnesota, Rodgers is penciled in. He might not win the job, but he's penciled in. So there's a difference from that perspective. Plus the second year, Warren Burks. Boy, I got a lot of people who were panicked over Warren Burks.
Yeah, I got a lot of that too. People not happy we didn't bring back Warren Burks, John.
You don't pay backup linebackers $2.5 million a year. All you got to do is look at Warren's contract last year, 1.125, veteran minimum, 1 year.
Is that one? I mean, I guess people would say, is that $1 million worth saving when he was a good backup? Especially with the Nakobe Dean injury right now. I understand why people wanted to bring him back. I get a kick out of people like, oh my God, we didn't bink back Warren Burks. Like, we'll be okay, guys. We will be okay with that.
Not when you have Jeremiah Trotter Jr., and they do like Jeremiah Trotter Jr., and that was probably the plan all along, to escalate. A lot of people are saying, oh, see, the Eagles got rid of Kenny Pickett. They traded Kenny Pickett to get rid of Tanner McKee. No, Kenny Pickett was the backup quarterback the entire year. The Eagles were very comfortable with it. Even when he got hurt, he was the backup quarterback. Now he's set to make $2.7 million, $2.75 million, which isn't a ton for a backup quarterback. But from the Eagles' perspective, they were able to flip it to Cleveland for a quarterback they liked in the draft. And now you have another year of experience and development behind the scenes for Tanner McKee. Maybe he seizes the job. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe DGR beats him out. But whatever. That's an Eagles move. That's sort of what they do and try to flush out this value. And that was probably the most Eaglesy move on day one of free agency. Letting guys out the door was always expected, and the Eagles are prepared for it. Now, my question is, and my issue is, if there is an issue, and I say it all the time, this organization has become one of the best in football with their philosophy, and they steered away from their philosophy, which is building both sides of the front first and foremost. I don't love that. Now, I'm also, you got to make difficult decisions, because I've said pretty much from the start they had to sign Zach Bond. So,
well, I mean, would the pushback be, John, they do have 3 first-round picks on that defensive line. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong in that they didn't lose good players, but from their estimation, they might be like, well, this is why we spent 3 first-rounders on these draft, on this defensive line.
Yeah, but the strength of the Eagles has always been they come at you in waves on the defensive front. They come at you in waves. They won 8 guys. Last year, it fell down to 7 because of the injuries, Brandon and Bryce. But, when they come into it, they won 8 guys. And the goal is to have guys, 100% in the fourth quarter if it's a close game and everybody's got, all their conditioning in place and all that kind of stuff. They come at you in waves. The Super Bowl is a perfect example of this. Now, you can say, well, it's a lot easier to deal with Jalen Carter if Milton Williams isn't out there. It's a lot easier to deal with Josh Sweat if Nolan Smith isn't out there playing well, or vice versa. And you could say, all right, I'm going to slide to this guy. I'm going to slide to this guy. If you do that against the Eagles, the other guy's going to beat you. And who beat you in the Super Bowl was Josh Sweat and Milton Williams, the Kansas City Chiefs. They're very expensive, but it's just atypical of the Eagles. Yeah. And Howie said that. He prepared it. This is not going to be a typical off season.
Yeah, that's why I love talking to you too, because I remember after that press conference with Howie, I asked you, what do you make of it? And you went right down that road. And I didn't hear many people go down that road of, I think Howie tipped his hand on something here. And, it's really all played out exactly how he kind of insinuated it would if you read the tea leaves.
Yeah, and I'm not even going to take credit for it because I kind of knew that's what he was talking about, and from different avenues. That's exactly what he was talking about, because that's their history, and he has stated it again and again and again and again. Offensive line as well, and they steer away from it. And it's ironic that they win the Super Bowl, and I think everybody gets caught up. They win the Super Bowl when they finally get an off-ball linebacker and they finally get a running back. But they've had good running backs, but a superstar running back. The two positions they've devalued. But and there's no doubt the performances of those two particular players, they were phenomenal. All first-team All-Pros. They had two first-team All-Pros. They were Saquon Barkley and Zach Bond. Top 5 defensive player of the year, offensive player of the year, rushing record, splash plays all over the place for Zach Bond. Those players are phenomenal. Nobody's disputing that. But it's also those players don't win, even with those seasons, without the foundation in place.
Right.
That defensive front and that offensive line. They don't. So when you let good players out the door at those particular positions, that does worry me a little bit.
No doubt about it. Johnny Mac, I want you to give your objective take for Eagles fans here, and I'll ask you what you think is the biggest loss, and we'll talk a little bit about that. A couple other good questions for you here in the open here. But the objective take, as objective as you can be on this team, and people are not sounding the alarms, but some people are like, well, that's a lot of turnover. And I get it. You're losing some good players here, and obviously you have to recoup. But all good from the Eagles front? You think this is still a team that's ready to compete, or are you like, whoa, this is a lot of turnover. Let's see, what they do to recoup it. Where are you on that scale from the Eagles' perspective right now?
No, they don't. I mean, like I said, they lost 11% of the roster. There's 30% turnover. This is going to happen. It happens every year. So no, but you have to make decisions. You have to make good decisions like they did last year about replacing guys. You can't just say, I'm going to elevate Jalix Hunt and Nolan Smith, and they're going to be starters, and I'm going to elevate Moro Ajomo, and I'm going to you can't just do that. You got to bring in competent competition. If these guys grab the baton and earn it, that's fine. But, and by the way, the Eagles aren't going to do that. They're going to bring players in. It never fails every day. March 10th, you asked me last night on the show on Football 24/7 who was the winner of day one, and I said Chicago. To me they got they've gotten 3 offensive linemen, 2 defensive linemen. That's what I believe in. And they're starting to build the right way. I guarantee in February of next year, I'm not saying the Chicago Bears win the Super Bowl still. I mean, they got a ways to go. Winning free agency isn't what it's about, but everybody overreacts to the first day of free agency. Even in a bad year like this, where it's supposed to be a bad free agent class, everybody still wants the players they recognize the names. Like Jonathan Allen signs this morning. I said, the guy's going to be expensive because he's going to chase rings. That stuff is unrealistic. Like nobody who can make $60 million, and it was 33, is going to come here for $8 million to
these
chase
are professionals. I mean, yeah.
So, I mean, you got to be realistic about it, but there's still plenty of good players out there, and the Eagles will sign some of them at some point. But it's not going to be like it was last year. They're going to rely, how we said, maintenance off season. The salary cap is an issue for the Eagles. It's malleable, yes, but that doesn't mean you can do anything you want. And this is going to be a little bit different. He signaled it. Now you're seeing it. He wasn't lying.
No doubt. Johnny Mac, what's the biggest loss here for the Birds? Josh Sweat or Milton Williams on that defensive line?
I think Milton, because of his age, probably when you think of the depth they have on hand, probably Josh, but they have a little bit more depth at defensive tackle. But Milton, because of his age and shelf life, and he's got a chance to be a really good player for a really long time. And Josh is a little bit further along. So, I never thought they could get both of them back, but I think if he moved around enough deck chairs, he could have gotten one of them back. And I think they should have gotten one of them back. But, the guy they probably wanted back was Milton, and he was just too expensive. And I can't argue that because, is he a $26 million a year player? When if he's a $26 million player in 2025, what do you think Jalen Carter is going to be next year? So again, it's more.
40. He's getting 40. He's got to get 40, John.
It's more than about the moment, too. That's what I think everybody doesn't realize.
Right.
They know what's coming down the pike. It's not like they're going to wake up and go, oh shit, we gotta pay Jalen Carter next year. That's part of the reason they didn't pay Melton Williams this year. Probably the biggest part of the reason, to be honest. Not that they think Milton's not a good player. Can he pay $135 million and $126 million without affecting parts of the team? No. So you got to make these difficult decisions.
John, what about replacements for these players? Let's start with Milton and Josh. Who's harder to replace? I just asked you which one's the bigger loss. I actually differ with you. I think I know you were kind of a toss-up, but I have Sweat just because I feel like you need edge production in today's NFL, and I do feel okay with Jalen Carter on the interior. But what's the replacement plan look like for these guys, and who's harder to replace for this Eagles team?
Well, I think they're both hard to replace. I would think that there's more in-house optimism. It's difficult. There's in-house optimism for Moro Ajomo and Jalix Hunt. Now Jalix has the better pedigree, but to me, they need two defensive ends or edge rushers or outside linebackers, whatever your favorite labeling sequence is. They need two. So to me, just the position as a whole, edge is a bigger problem because they need multiple bodies at edge, in my estimation. Now, hopefully from their perspective, they think Bryce Hupp is going to be better. I know that's not going to excite people, but and then that limit, that would help greatly. I don't know if it's something you can count on, but the Eagles are counting on a lot of things. They're counting on Kaylee Ringo. They're counting on Jalix Hunt. They're counting on Moro Ajomo. They're counting on Jeremiah Trotter Jr. to be linebacker 3 when Nakobe Dean is rehabbing.
Yeah. Another thing Howie said, by the way, when he spoke, where young guys are going to
guys are going to have to play. Yeah. And even Tanner McKee getting elevated. Or if it turns out to be Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who's a very young player as well. It's dangerous to go with young backup quarterbacks. It's always dangerous.
We'll see what ends up happening. A lot of turnover here for the Philadelphia Eagles. A crazy day in the NFL. Johnny Mac, before we move forward, we'll continue the Eagles talk. We'll talk to Chris Franklin in hour number 2. I want to welcome and thank everybody for being here on this Tuesday morning of Birds 365. This has got to be the most fun, maybe next to the draft, the most fun week of the offseason, where there's just moves constantly. Every time you refresh your feed, there's a new NFL move. So I love seeing where all the new players are going and everything. So appreciate everybody being here. Appreciate you guys joining in on the reaction and the breakdown with us here on Birds 365. John, before we move into some more Eagles topics, I do want to ask you about the craziness of the NFL world yesterday, man. Deals coming left and right, big money deals. What stuck out to you the most? I know you talked about the Bears a little bit, but any other deal that you liked? I'll give you one deal in the NFC that I liked. I liked Poona Ford to the LA Rams because they know they need to stop the run.
Yeah,
Based on
I'm
their
getting
couple of games
somebody,
versus the Eagles.
somebody with some size.
Yeah.
Yeah. Boy, the best one. I mean, I'd have to think about that because it involves value. As far as almost inherently, as I said, the guys with the biggest money are going to be disappointments. That's just the way it works because they're good players getting paid like great players. And if you look at the biggest deals on day one, Milton was number one, by the way. Sam Darnold was number two, which makes sense because of the position. Actually, it shocks me he wasn't number one. And there's, one report. His first report was 110. He would have been number one. Then it was 100. So I assume the 100 is correct, but I don't know that. Dan Moore was third. I mean, I guarantee he's cut in 2 years. Guarantee it. I hate to be blunt about it, but guarantee it. Dan Moore?
Yeah. I said that yesterday when it happened live. I was live on the air when that deal came in. I'm like, oof.
Aaron Banks was again, and look at where it is. And then Josh Sweat. So the Eagles 2 of 5. Defensive front, 2 guys. Offensive line, 2 guys. Quarterback. So there it is. As far as the value, I'll try to formulate one in the break. I haven't thought about it, but yeah, that's not a bad one because Poona Ford's a big dude and they can rush the passer. But
yeah, I mean, that's why
they're the worst run defense team I've ever seen in my life. So a lot of that had to do, they're further behind the arc of the Eagles. I mean, their middle linebacker, I hate to pick on that guy. He was a freaking embarrassment. Christian Roseboom.
Yeah.
My God.
You picked on him when we played him in the playoffs.
Oh, my Lord. I've never seen anything like it. Now the Eagles offensive line can make people look silly, but he was not equipped. So to get a big body to keep hopefully keep bodies off a player like you got to improve over a player like that, but that's up to the Rams. But yeah, just looking at those were the most expensive contracts of day one. And, maybe I'm biased, but I like Josh Sweat going with Jonathan Gannon, and I like Milton Williams. The other 3, I'm like, I love Sam Darnold, but I mean, they just let DK Metcalf walk out the door and Tyler Lockett.
I know. What are we doing here? I said the same thing. I'm like, all right, good. You got him. Now what? Now who's he throwing to? I mean, it doesn't make sense. I don't get that. Yeah. Maybe if they can protect him a little better.
No, it's one day. I mean, it's one day. Everybody's they're going to add receivers.
Yeah, but
everybody's like panic stricken because their team didn't get so-and-so. It's one day. They're going to fill the holes.
John, who was your loser of yesterday? Because I got one in mind, and I'm wondering if you have the same one. Maybe you haven't thought about it, but I have one in mind that's a big loser, in my opinion, from yesterday's day.
Losers. Well, I mean, in one day, the Eagles were, I just said, 2 of the top 5 contracts were Eagles. So, I mean, if you're being honest,
mine doesn't have to do with losing players. I will say that.
So anyway, if you have to look seriously, I'm trying to think, I have to give credit to Ryan Poles, which I don't like to do.
Yeah, he's done good.
Losers. I don't know. I mean, Jerry Jones because of his
I got the New York Jets.
Oh, that's a good one.
I should have said the Jets. Fields to 2 years, and you're trying to turn this thing around with a new coach? Are you kidding me? I hated that move.
That's it. That's a good one. That's a good one. That is, this is not the year you want to be looking for a quarterback.
No, it's not.
There's one quarterback, and he's gone. That Las Vegas was able to flip and get a decent quarterback. Not that Gino's great, but and that opened the door for Sam in Seattle. There's one quarterback and he's gone. That's it. And you can get Cam Ward in the draft if you're Tennessee or Cleveland, depending on what Tennessee does. This is not the year to be looking for a quarterback. And yeah, the fact that we're even trying to, and I got a good friend who's a Jets fan, and he can talk himself into anything. And he's already talking himself into it. I'm like, dude, I always tell the story when the Eagles were out in Chicago, the game that Jalen got hurt in 2022. It was brutally cold. That's what I remember most. But second was, I mean, you need a sundial to measure this guy's processing. I've never seen anybody hold on to the ball longer than he is just brutal. Yeah, that is a good luck. New York football is going to be awful again.
Yeah, brutal. Absolutely brutal. I wonder what our old friend Jody Mack is thinking of. Just remember how much he loved.
Oh, he loved Justin Fields coming out in the draft.
Fields. It was one of our videos. I remember posting it that Jody Mack loved Justin Fields. Well, Jody, now he's in New York with you, brother.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't mind him coming out, but once you get to see a player, I mean, you got to get off college production. I mean, you just. And even in Pittsburgh, he won some games. Pittsburgh played a certain style to keep the football out of his hands. The more he throws it, the more trouble you're probably going to be in. And that's never a good thing with a quarterback.
No doubt about it. We'll see what ends up happening there for that. Johnny Mack, I want to ask you about two guys that no moves on yet. All right. Mekhi Becton. I'm wondering what's going on with him. I thought he would be a name that creeped up, especially with the way the offensive linemen were getting paid yesterday. You mentioned the one contract, Dan Moore gets like $80 million. I was
waiting. Yeah, well, he's a tackle. But Aaron Banks.
He's not that good of a tackle.
No, he's okay. He's average. But again, now he's going to, because people in Tennessee are going to see that contract and say, oh, we got a great tackle. No, you didn't. You got an average to an above average tackle. Same thing with Aaron Banks in Green Bay. He's okay. He's not a bad player, but now he's getting paid top of the market money. So you expect him to be a Pro Bowl level guard. He's not going to be. With Mekhi, I've said it 100 times on this show. It's more difficult negotiation than people realize for a lot of different reasons. And you're seeing some of that uncertainty around the player. Some of it health related, some of it position related, some of it old habits die hard. When you play poorly as a high-level first-round pick, people say, well, you only did it for a year. Think about Darnold, the quarterback. Oh, you only did it for a year. It's hard for people to change their minds. They want to be right. And Mekhi played really well last year, and I think the longer he stays out there, the better for the Eagles. I'll say that.
I agree with that for sure. We'll see what ends up happening. I think he could be a guy that comes off the board today. We will see what ends up happening. But obviously, with day 2 of free agency here, plenty of moves still to happen. John, the other guy I'm curious about here in Eagle Land, it's Dallas Goedert. I know yesterday he's not a free agent, so it wasn't really a day for him. But I don't know how they're going to let him walk. And I saw a report from Inside the Birds. I don't know if it's true or not, but they gave him permission to seek a trade. I don't know if that's true or not, but any update on Dallas Goedert? What is this team going to do? What could change their thinking, if anything? I have a hard time believing they're letting him walk out the door and replacing him with a rookie, but that's what people seem to think. Where are you on the Dallas Goedert stuff and anything more you can tell us?
Well, first of all, half the league is available in trade. I mean, everybody. Now, Eagles again at the forefront. They did it with Hassan Reddick. They did it with Josh Sweat. Bit him in the ass with Josh Sweat, in my opinion, because of what happened, what unfolded. But what they're doing is saying, hey, All right, you don't believe us. This is not your market value. Go out and see your market value and come back to us. And from the Eagles' perspective, it's all right if we can get a 4th-round pick and somebody wants to give him 3 years. Godspeed. And, you know, the more likely scenario is he goes out and says, same thing people say here. Oh, he's post 30. He's missed games because of injury. Probably not as high as he and his agent think it is. And then he comes back and everything's copacetic. They guarantee his money for this year. They tack on some money for next year and you move forward. They did the same thing with Slay as well.
Right.
They do it all the time now. And so if you've seen it leading up to free agent, how many guys got permission to seek trades? That's what's going on. It's not about necessarily moving on. It's about, all right, you don't believe us? Go look and see what your value is. And most of the time, it aligns with what the team believes. And you can work something out. And that's happened in the past with Slay and Sweat. And Hassan was just, he was out the door. But he just wanted outrageous money. And you saw where Hassan is now. Never got that outrageous money. Signed a 1-year deal for 12 million, I think, guaranteed.
Yeah, that's what it was. 14 million with 12 million guaranteed.
Yeah, that didn't work out for him either. So that's what they're doing. But half the league, don't get upset about guys being requested. That all that is check your market,
right,
and that kind of thing.
And get back to me. Let me know what we can do. John, I do not like this for a couple different reasons. All right. You're telling me they re-signed Saquon Barkley, which is great. All right, whatever. They didn't have to do it, but they decided to do it. They bring back Saquon Barkley, give him a little bit of a pay raise and an extra year of guaranteed money. Awesome. That signals to me, okay, we're going to stick with the philosophy that we established last year offensively, which is run the football. Now you're going to get rid of potentially Mekhi Becton and Dallas Goedert. Now, both of those guys are not out the door yet. They could both return, but that's going to change the running game a lot, in my opinion, John. What do you say?
Well, I have to see what the resulting moves are. Are they drafting Anthony Belton, the guy we talked about? Are they signing or trading for a tight end who can block? Again, you're probably not going to find a tight end who can do both to the level of Dallas Goedert, but you can piecemeal it out. You could have, your blocking tight end. That's what most teams do. Blocking tight end, your receiving tight end, and go about it that way. Might even be in-house. Might even have him. Might be Nick Muse. I don't know. Big dude. That's his reputation. Coming out of college at South Carolina, he's a blocker. Maybe he's good at it. I have no idea. He's only, came in the playoffs. He was with the Vikings practice squad, and after their season ended, he signed with the Eagles. That was the greatest season in NFL history. Won 14 games there, and then he came here and won a Super Bowl. So I don't know. Maybe he can block, but you can get a tight end who can block. Are you going to get a well-rounded tight end? I'm not as concerned about the blocking part of it. They'll get somebody who can block. The question is, do you become too, are your tendencies exposed? If this guy's on the field, you're going to run it. If this guy's on the field, if Calcaterra's on the field, you're going to throw it. That's what you got to be worried about. But, it's going to be different. They're an endangered species, Dallas Goedert type of tight ends.
Yeah, they
George
are.
Kittle type of tight ends. The whole league is go. So eventually you're going to have to go that way anyway. Maybe you trade for Michael Mayer, as we've talked about.
Yeah, he's one good option because he can block well. He can do, he can do both things well. Maybe not as good as Goddard, but he can at least do them.
I still don't know why Las Vegas would trade him other than.
Well, isn't it as simple as Brock Bowers? I mean,
Well, yeah, but you need 2 tight ends. I mean, for
Right.
years the Eagles had Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert. I mean, why they have him under a rookie deal? That to me comes later. It's only his second year.
Right. Trade him after year 3 or year
Yeah.
4 when he wants to. Yeah.
So I don't know. Other than they're a bad organization, I haven't checked if I've seen all the rumors, but I don't know if they're realistic. I think that's people sort of saying what you just said. Well, they have Brock Bowers. Like, all right, okay. You need 3 tight ends, really. So there's no harm in having 2 good tight ends. The Eagles did it pretty well. So, but yeah, they're gonna, and they've already, again, at that position, I've said multiple times, they've already signaled by their future signings with Nick Muse and Cameron Latu that we know we have to get better at the depth with tight end.
We'll see what ends up happening there. I think Bob is right. He says Mayer-type players don't fit in a Chip Kelly offense. It might have something to do with that, Chip Kelly over there. And we all know how Chip Kelly doesn't care what his players do well. Chip Kelly wants to do what Chip Kelly wants to do. We'll see what ends up happening there. Let's go to a couple super chats. I want to thank everybody for being here. Still got plenty to talk about. I do want to talk about that cornerback position. How are we feeling on Keely Ringo, everybody? I'll talk to John about that. Let's go to a couple super chats here. Prince Swayze checking in. What's up, Prince? The Eagles are not breaking up the Georgia Bulldogs. We are definitely overreacting, especially J-Mac. You can't sign Milton and Sweat and then Bond. They didn't.
Yeah, I'm definitely amongst the Eagles fan base. I'm definitely the overreacting one.
No, I don't think John overreacted. Come on, Prince.
Yeah, I look at the foundational philosophy. That's where which has served this team well.
Which, by the way, you're right. They did stray from it. They had a defensive lineman and a defensive end that were 27 and 25, hit the market. They paid the linebacker and the running back instead. Yeah. I mean, come on, Prince. That's a stray from the philosophy.
Yeah, that's just common sense. I mean, I can't help you there, Prince, if you can't recognize that. I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
Love you, Prince, but I don't agree with that one, brother. Appreciate you being here, though. Appreciate the $10 super chat. Jason 18 with $20. Thank you, Jason. He says, I'm confused about the designated June 1 cut with Slay. I thought you can designate 2 before June 1st, and he's a free agent now, but I'm hearing he can't sign until after June 1st. If that's the case, why have designation then? It's a good question by 18. John, your response.
Well, it hasn't been released yet. And he hasn't been released yet with that post June 1st designation. That was a report. I forget who had it first, and the Eagles have done this in the past. Clear indication they're still mulling things over. Can we bring him back? Do we want to bring him back? Are we comfortable with Ringo? Did they believe they were going to get Rodgers back? That might have changed the thinking. They haven't released him. Until that name comes on the wire.
Is there a reason for that, or?
Yeah, they're mulling it over. That's,
but
just what I said.
Put it out there. Slay's like shopping to get signed, but they haven't released him. I'm a little confused.
Well, they did the same thing in 2023 when he almost went to Baltimore. They were going to release him.
Big Dom can strike a deal.
Well, no, they were legit going to release him. At that time, it was a little bit different. They were legit. They said, hey, we're going to release you because we can't pay this.
Right.
And then they gave him the opportunity to say, hey, but go look what I just said. Go look in the open market, see what you can get. He was comfortable with something he could get from Baltimore. Then the Eagles came back and said, oh, shit, we want you. And then Dom made the call. This time, I don't know the exact circumstances other than they're planning to release him with a post-1st June designation. Again, maybe the Rodgers thing complicated things because my initial assumption was they'd re-sign Rodgers on a 1-year deal and they let him compete with Ringo, hope Ringo wins the job, but you have that safety net. Now that safety net is gone, maybe they're having second thoughts. Maybe they're saying, can we go 1 more year? Blah, blah, blah. But to Jason's point, they haven't technically released him. So nothing has happened. There's no post-June 1st designation. They haven't released him yet. The plan is to release him with a June 1st designation. If they do that, he can sign at any time.
Right. Is it a little bit of, is it a little messed up from the player perspective? Like, is Slay like, what the fuck? He goes, release me if you're going to release me, or is it not really like
No,
that?
I'm sure from Slay's been very honest in saying, if everything's equal, he'd rather play in Philadelphia, he'd rather finish here. So I don't think he cares as much as only if it derails if he's going to sign with Pittsburgh, which is most likely. If it derails that, then I'm sure he'll get pissed. But
Yeah.
I don't think it'll get to that point. I think, it'll work out. It'll probably get released and he'll probably sign at Pittsburgh, is my guess.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening there. Speaking of cornerbacks and Slay there, Jason A-Team, thank you for the super chat, brother. Appreciate your support. As always, one of our great members here on JAKIB Sports. Appreciate everybody listening in right now. Don't forget to hit that like button for us on the show. A big day one. And it wasn't even really day one. Day one is supposed to be tomorrow, March 12th. But the legal negotiating period, John, is really the first day of free agency, because basically most
everything's done by Wednesday.
Yeah, I mean, most deals.
But I'll say this. There's always one or two every year deal that is reported. Somebody backs out.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We'll see if something changes here on some of the deals that came down yesterday. A lot of big money yesterday. John, I do want to talk to you about the cornerbacks, but real quick, before I get to that, let me just real quick run down the NFC East with you real quick, because there's not too much to talk about. The Giants didn't do a whole lot. The Cowboys didn't do a whole lot. They signed a guard. They signed a Javonte Williams.
They never do a whole lot.
They never do. And, whatever. And then the Eagles didn't do much. And then the one Commander signing that I didn't like, they traded for Laramie Tunsil, which I thought was a good improvement on the offensive line. They signed Javon Kinlaw to a 3-year, $45 million deal with $30 million guaranteed. I didn't like it.
Yeah, I agree with you. He's a pain in the ass, number one. And then number two, he's overrated. And number three, you already had Jonathan Allen. Not even close to Jonathan Allen, in my estimation. Yeah, I didn't like the Debo trade. I don't like some of the stuff Washington is doing. I thought Adam Peters had a great first year. I think he's getting caught up in some of that.
Yeah,
and you think about, Kinlaw used to be in San Francisco as well. There are other teams that you can pick from. Come on, dude. Now, Tunsil I like. That's a good player at an important position. But, yeah, I didn't like that one either. I just don't think he's that good. He's certainly not Jonathan Allen.
No, and they didn't. I mean, I don't know. How much guaranteed money did Jonathan Allen get? 40?
I haven't seen. I think it's in the 30s.
I mean, because Kinlaw got $30 million guaranteed in a 3-year deal for $45 million. I think Jonathan
Allen
definitely
got more than that.
He made $20 million a year average annual value. His guaranteed, let's just call it 40. I mean, come on. Yeah, $5 million more to go for Jonathan Allen. Maybe they just wanted to. Maybe the player was done in Washington. Maybe they just needed to move.
Yeah, that's a strange one because he was hurt last year, so maybe it's one of that factors into it as well. Maybe they think he's breaking down. I don't know. I know when he's out there, he's good.
They got worse in the defensive line. That's not. I don't think that's a good thing for them.
Yeah, because I had a lot of Eagles fans saying, "Well, get Jonathan Allen." I'm like, that ain't happening. Somebody's paying. You asked me on the show. I said somebody's paying that dude.
The other guy that came out yesterday was that Grady Jarrett from Atlanta. I thought he was
Chicago.
He got pretty big money too.
Yeah, Grady's a good player.
Yeah, he is
aging, but yeah, Chicago got 3 offensive linemen, 2 defensive linemen. So they are shifting gears to a better philosophy, evidently.
Yeah. There you go. Ryan Poles finally figured it out over there. Which, hey, it's all right. I mean, it does take time.
Hey,
Howie Roseman
you got to learn.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of teams. Again, I've been praising the Bears way too much. A lot of teams would have fired Ryan Poles by now.
Well, I appreciate that you're praising them because I do think it's one thing to be bad and make bad decisions and then continue to make bad decisions over and over again. The Bears have made some good decisions, some bad decisions in the last couple of years. The bad decisions were obviously more costly than the good decisions were. And this year, they're I think so far they've done a good job. So I think he
Well,
does.
I think the important part to learn from that is young GMs need to learn from their mistakes, but you can only learn from your mistakes if you have time to learn from your mistakes.
So true.
A lot of teams would have blown him out by now, and you never know. Maybe he has learned. Maybe he's doing things better. Howie was not Howie in his first run, to say the least. He's gotten extensive experience, and that's half the battle of why he's smarter than the majority of his peers' experience. And going through it and making mistakes and correcting from those mistakes. That's half the battle. But so few get an opportunity to do that.
No doubt about it.
It's such a reactionary league.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. But good stuff there. The Bears did some good things. We'll see if they can compete a little bit in the NFC this year. The one good thing, John, I'll say this: the one good thing I was happy about with all the Eagles' losses was I didn't feel like they went to any, maybe the Vikings, maybe the Cardinals. I don't know. They're NFC teams, but Milton to the Patriots, Darius Slay presumably to the Steelers, Oren Burks to the Bengals, Isaiah Rodgers to the Vikings. That didn't really bother me much, and then Sweat to the Cardinals. I felt like, all right, you can keep them on all those teams. That doesn't bother me at all. It's better than going to Washington or going to Dallas or something like that. So I liked where the Eagles guys ended up from an Eagles perspective.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at potential contenders, I mean, only Minnesota would be in there, and Rodgers he's a backup. He's a good backup. And he's going to be a starter for them. So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. I mean, Cincinnati always has a chance because of their offense to make good decisions, but they don't have a lot of assets we talk about all the time. So, and again, Oren's played great, but he's a backup player. The two players that are legit players went to New England and Arizona. New England, you don't even have to worry about. Right. Arizona, unlikely you have to worry about.
Very unlikely you have to worry about that. We'll see what ends up happening with all that. Good stuff, Johnny Mac. John, I'll write off a couple super chats, and then we'll talk cornerbacks before we get to Chris Franklin coming up at 9:20. Before I read the super chats, let me quickly tell you guys about the great people at BetUS. Go and check them out, betus.com.pa. That's betus.com.pa. Use the promo code YouTube150. Gives you a 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit. You get 125% on your second and third deposit, all up to $2,000 to deposit less and bet with more at BetUS. That's betus.com.pa, betus.com.pa. And a big thanks to them for sponsoring the 2-hour show today here on Birds 365.